very good afternoon or evening to all of you guys. Hope you guys are doing well and welcome to yet another session of our virtual learning program for the 2024 Advanced Levels batch. And also, let me check with you guys. I don't know whether this will, right? Don't know whether this is something that I shouldn't ask. I heard they might be publishing or releasing the results today. Is that true, or did I hear it properly? Am I correct? Ladies and gentlemen, yes, have they already released the results, Pata? Not yet? No, right. Okay, so you guys are anticipating the results, right? Not showing. Okay. So I know this is a bit of a difficult day for you guys to maybe concentrate. Your nerves are on edge. Yeah. Any moment, expecting your results. So let me give you some confidence. I'm sure all of you guys have done well. All of you will get really good results, right? So be confident, Buddha. Don't think about it, right? As the very old English idiom goes, a watched pot, right? If you keep watching the pot, it doesn't boil. So don't keep looking at the results. It will not come. So just forget about it. They will release it when they release it. Meanwhile, let's concentrate on our learning. Yeah, that's a better approach to have. Right. Again, be confident. All of you would get outstanding results. Right. So with that, Buddha, let's start off. Today, we are starting the third and the final chapter of our theory program in terms of Unit 1. Unit 1, 3 chapters, right? And the second chapter is what we completed last week. Yes. So today we are looking at the third and the final chapter, which is economic systems and how economic systems or how different economic systems solve basic economic problems. Right. So with the time we have left for today's virtual session, what I'm trying to do, I've adjusted my agenda or my area that I plan to do. I have adjusted it a bit. And my focus is now making sure that you guys end up with, or that you guys receive, a really, really good, solid introduction into what is an economic system. Okay, so that is what we are trying to do in this session. So let's work together and ensure that we have a very productive virtual learning session and get ourselves a very strong introduction to economic systems. Right. So as I start off, I think we should start at this point. The word system we are about to talk about, we are about to learn what is an economic system. The word system is actually not an economic word or economic term. The word system, actually we have borrowed from biology. It's a biological word, or a word used in biological sciences mainly, right? The word system. So normally when we say system, Buddha, earlier we used to say economic organizations, but now we say economic systems, the more modern term. And a system, now for example, we talk about a lot, especially even these IT companies, right? The social media companies like Alphabet, that is the parent company or the owning company of Google and all that, right? Alphabet or Facebook, now they go as Meta, right? Even these companies, they use the term ecosystem. So ecological system. So you can see it's a word coming from bioscience. Normally, now let me take an analogy example that you guys will be familiar with. I'm sorry, I will talk about one of the subjects you guys did in O-levels, just to explain this a bit. Now, in O-levels, when you guys learned science, when you learned about the human body and anatomy and things like that, very basic things you learned, you realize with our body, right, the human body, this amazing creation called the human body, is actually made up of several systems. Yes or no? We have a central nervous system where the supercomputer is our brain, and it's connected through the brain, the entire body, right? The nerves are running, and there's an entire system, a central nervous system through our spine, right? Okay. Then what other systems do we have in our body? If you guys can just think about it. What other systems do we have in our body? One I gave is the central nervous system. Any other systems? There we go. Very good. The digestive system, right? I did my O-levels and A-levels in Sinhalese medium. So in O-levels, we learned, we call this what? The Snayu Paddhatiya and Bahisraviya Paddhatiya, digestive system. Then what else do we have? No, sorry, Ahara Jirna Paddhatiya, that is digestive system, right? Okay, respiratory system, yes, how the lungs work, how we take oxygen in, and how our lungs convert or add the oxygen to our blood, and then it goes through our entire body, you know, the respiratory system, very good. Then, yes, the pump, that is all important, right? So we have a blood circulation system. No, there are more. So all of these systems together make up the remarkable thing called the human body and this functioning thing. So the body is made up of several systems. Each system has components. In a system, Buddha, there are different components. All these components come together and we have a system. And all systems have a purpose. There is a functionality. What is the word? Functionality. There's a purpose for each system. Now, the purpose or the whole thing about the central nervous system is, right, to transmit different information to our brain, and the brain will process that information, right, and quickly we will react. Our skin, our nerves, you know, everything is connected through that. Then the respiratory system, then the blood circulation system, you know, the heart is the main element. Then around that, we have the different blood vessels, the veins, the arteries, right? Everything is connected, you know, Damani, Shira, and Keshanalika, you know, the words I remember, right? All of these are components. So each system, Buddha, is made up of several components. Only if all the components work properly, the system can do its job, the functionality. That is, now if you take the blood circulation system to properly circulate the blood around our body to make sure all our vital organs receive the oxygen and the blood supply they need. Likewise, we say economic system. So it is a combination of many components. It is a combination of many components. The components in the biological systems are, now in the body, different parts of our body, right, are combined. Likewise, Buddha, in an economic system also, we have components to the economic system. The different components in an economic system are called institutions. They are called what? Institutions. Like the body has different systems and each system has so many components together. The economic system has different components. Those components of an economic system are called, what is the term? What is the term? Institutions. What do we call them? Institutions. Okay, right. Now, the body is a biological system. The economic system is a social system. Society, each society in the world, each country in the world has created these systems, economic systems. So we refer to these institutions, the components, as social institutions. What do we call them, Pata? Social institutions. Then an economic system is where we take these different social institutions and connect them. So each of these institutions react with each other, interact with each other, but there's a way we connect them. That is called the structure. That is called the what? Structure, the way things connect. The different systems in our body also have a structure. You know where the heart is, you know where the different arteries are, right? There's a structure. Likewise, with the economic system also has a structure. So then I said, so there is a social, institutional structure is there, a setup is there in an economic system, like in the biological systems of our body. Then I said all systems have a functionality, have a purpose, right? So similarly, the purpose of an economic system is to use, right? Like the purpose of the blood circulation system through the heart to pump the blood around the body and bring that back to the heart and keep on circulating the blood. Similarly, the function of an economic system is to use our scarce productive resources and allocate them in order to produce goods and services with the end goal, with the final aim or objective of, this is the function, solving basic economic problems. So what is the function or purpose of an economic system? To solve basic economic problems by allocating scarce or limited resources of the society. Get it? That's what an economic system is all about. So, but an economic system, right, is a certain method. Economic system is a certain, like a machine. There's a word we use, mechanism. What is the word? Mechanism. So, an economic system is a social, because society creates this, social, and it is for the society, social, institutional, because we connect many institutions within the system, components are there, social, institutional, mechanism to allocate scarce resources of a society and solve its basic economic problems. We will later on ask the question, what are these basic economic problems? For now, all of you have learned in the first material, in the first book, we have learned, in the first chapter we have learned, and we call them, if you guys remember, we call them what to produce, or we name them as what to produce. Can someone recall quickly? What were these basic economic problems every society has to solve? And to solve, they have to create this social institutional mechanism called an economic system. What are these three problems? Just go ahead. Anyone can unmute the microphone and just give me the three problems. So I will help you there. Three. First one I gave.
What to produce?
Yes.
How to produce? To whom to produce?
Very good, Deepti. Excellent. See, there we go. Right? What to produce? And Heshan has also given us an answer. What to produce, how to produce, and whom to produce. We'll talk about the three problems also a bit today. So that's basically what an economic system is trying to solve by using our scarce or limited resources. Is that clear? So that is simply what an economic system is. There can be many different definitions, right? Even in your study material, I've given a definition that is in the Dictionary of Social Sciences of the United Nations Organization. I mean, there are many other ways of defining an economic system, but all definitions, end of the day, talk about a similar thing. What is that? An economic system is the is a social institutional mechanism for the purpose of solving basic economic problems by allocating a society's scarce or limited resources. And in doing this, right, each of us, if you take you guys, if you take me, if you take Christine, Deepthi, Hasini, Heshan, Netmi, right? No, I have to read all the names, otherwise you guys will think I discriminated, right? Nuha or Shashini, all of you guys, and so on, all of you guys, and anyone who will be watching the recorded version also, all of us have the same components, same institutions in our biological system also, Nabuta. All of us have a central nervous system. All of us have what? Respiratory system. All of us have a digestive system. All of us have a blood circulation system. That's there, right? Not that one person has a blood circulation system, another person, it's optional, they don't have. No. All of us have the same institutions. All of us, all our institutions have the same kind of behavior, the systems in our body, biological systems. Fine, right? That's okay. But all of us are not the same. Each of us have our own, the way we look, our stature, right? How tall we are, how we sometimes our body language, or the way we move about, and more importantly, our personalities. Each of us is our own individual person, but our personalities are not going to be the same. Yes, our ideas are not going to be the same. Our thoughts, we say traits, qualities, our attitudes will be different. Similarly, Buddha, yes, every country in the world has this social institutional mechanism called an economic system. Perfect. Yes, every country has. And the components of the institutions are the same, right? But like each individual has their own unique personality, each economic system also has a unique legal structure, a unique set of incentives, things that motivate the people in that economy, that society, their own set of structure of the cultural elements, traditions, values, customs. They are different from country to country. The Sri Lankan values, the Sri Lankan culture, and the values and culture, there might be similarities, but there is difference. The Indian culture and the Sri Lankan culture, there is a difference. Each country has, each person is different. Is that clear? So all we have to understand, while there are common set of institutions and the purpose of an economic system is the same, it does change when it comes to those aspects of legal structure, incentive structure, structure of traditions, customs, what we say, ethics, and cultural elements, all those things. Is that clear? Right. I think you guys are overall clear on what an economic system is. Any questions before we get on with it and write the definition and move on? Anything else you guys think that you should clarify? If not, we are pretty confident on our knowledge about an economic system. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just share the study material on the screen, as you guys can see right about now. Right? Okay. So, we are in chapter 3, as you can see, Buddha. So, in terms of chapter 3, we are starting off with learning key 7, economic systems. Earlier, the more old school term is economic organizations. Right. Here, we are going to write that basic definition. And a part of the definition, we will try to include the basic problems also, then it's very clear. And then I've given a small alternative definition from the United Nations Dictionary of Social Sciences. Then here, in this part, we are going to talk about that, where each person, even though the biological system, the anatomy is there, the same, the personality is different, the cultural, those things, we'll talk about that at the end. Okay? Right. I think you guys are clear. So let me go back to the virtual whiteboard or the PowerPoint slides and get going. Right. introduction to economic system. What is an economic system? Page number might be different. It might be different. So don't worry about that. Or if it's the same, brilliant. Please write for a social and institutional mechanism, or you can say social institutional mechanism also. Social and institutional mechanism, organization created for the purpose of allocating scarce resources of a society and solving the society's basic economic problems. Right? Before we write this, I would like for you to add something. I'll give that. First, quickly write this. Okay? We know why we use all of these words now. We use a good analogy. Okay, let me know once you guys are done. Right. Now, let's add a small thing there, Avata. So it says society's basic economic problems. Maybe, I'm sorry, before you guys had the full stop, maybe we could have write this basic economic problems, right? As we'll remove the full stop a bit. Let me just do that quickly. Right. Okay. So we'll assume the full stop is not there. Basic economic problems, and then we'll say, but how do we say? We'll say, namely, you guys can write basic economic problems. You can have a comma if you want to, but normally we have it after this. Anyway, we can say, right? We'll make this a comma, right? Namely, and then I think you can have a comma or a semicolon, right? And then write with a, no, when I said I think, because you might not have space to write them one below the other. If you have the space to write them one below the other, then have a colon and then write them. If not, one after the other, you can write the basic economic problems. What are they? We can go with what to produce, or you can say, let's write it this way, make it easier. Okay, let's do it this way. Right, we can say what, comma, how, and whom to produce. Get it? What, comma, how and whom to produce. Done. Then you can have the full stop. Okay. Right. You can have the full stop. Done. What, comma, how and whom to produce. I think that makes it a bit more complete. Then this part is printed and given. That is the alternative definition. An economic system is a set of institutional arrangements. I use the word structure, if you guys remember, whose function is to employ the most efficiently scarce resources to meet the ends of society. End of the day, what the society wants is to solve its basic problems of what, how, and whom to produce. Then write this part. So as you guys know, we talked about this as well. That is where I said the personalities are different. Each economic system functions within a unique frame, right? Framework consisting of a legal structure, incentive structure. We learn this, right? Incentive structure, and then structure of traditions, customs, cultural elements. Traditions, customs, and cultural elements. So once you write that, you have not only said what is common or what is commonly seen within economic systems of all societies or countries, you have also said that they are different in terms of their legal structure, in terms of their incentives, in terms of their traditions, customs, and cultural elements. Right? Get that done and let me know. Right. Excellent. So that completes our ideal way to define what an economic system is. So just to be clear, it has, then our definition has two key elements. This is the first part of the definition, and this is the second part of the definition. Both need to be there. Okay, right. Then, as you guys know, now there's a table for this in your study material, right? As you guys know, every economic system is designed to solve three fundamental or basic economic problems. Three fundamental or basic economic problems. So we have a simple way of identifying them. What, how, whom to produce. But we need to also understand that when we describe these problems, we need to identify them as problems as well as, but I'll use this. I think this will be easier for you to remember then. The only way to solve a problem, is by making a decision. Whenever there is a problem and if it needs to be solved, what is required at one point or the other, we need to make a decision. Without making decisions, we cannot solve problems. So if we are to solve a problem, make a decision. Get it? So each of these problems, what, how, whom to produce, has a decision that needs to be made. So what we are trying to do is identify the problem, describe the problem. If there any other way to talk about the problem of what, how, and whom to produce, then we'll learn that. And then you can see in the table in front, there is this heading that says decision or decisions. Okay, so we learn the decision as well. How do you remember it? To solve any problem, we have to make a decision, right? So let's start with the problem, then go to the decision, right? First one, what to produce in what quantity. The second part, that is in what quantity. Sometimes we write it, sometimes we don't. If you want to completely say it, then we write that part as well. What to produce in what quantity. First, we have to decide using our scarce or limited resources, what are we going to produce and what are the quantities we are going to produce. This is known as an allocation, aka. What does aka mean? Also known as. So what to produce in what quantity is also known as an allocation problem. Also known as an allocation problem. It's a very simple thing. If you look at what I'm trying to illustrate or show here, on my hand we'll assume, I hope you guys can see, on my hand we'll assume, right, for a moment, right, in my hand we'll assume we have, right, the scarce resources of the society. So I'll use this hand. We have, I'm sure you guys can see, the scarce stock of productive resources, right? Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Then, as you guys know, resources have alternative uses. So there are many different, in front of me, there are many different goods, services that I can produce. But the thing is, I cannot produce all of these different goods and services. That is not possible. I can't produce everything. Because why? What is the central problem in economics? What is the base of the economic science? Right? A few of you guys dropped off. I think maybe the power cut took effect in their areas. That's my assumption. Right. So, the central problem in economics is, go on. You guys know this? Yes, very good, Nuha. Anyone else? Deepthi, very good. The central problem in economics is, the entire science of economics is built on. Hasini, very good. All of you know this. What you're thinking of is most probably the correct answer. The central problem in economics is, yes, very good. Shashini, right? Yes, basically, the central problem is scarcity. The central problem in economics is scarcity. Get it? So, yes, we have many different goods, alternative goods and services we can produce, but we have only a limited amount of resources. So, the problem of what to produce in what quantity is all about me deciding how much, look at the hands, how much of these limited resources am I going to, the English word for that is allocate. Am I going to allocate for different goods and services? You can use the word distribution, but a really good word is allocate, deciding what to do with or what goods and services to produce with our scarce resources. So the problem of what to produce in what quantity is called the allocation problem. You guys need to be very good with that now. Allocation problem, right? So first we have the allocation problem, which requires now the decision. What kind of a decision is required to solve the allocation problem? The decision is called a production decision. We have to decide what to produce. Production decision. So allocation problem, production decision. And simple way to say it is, what to produce in what quantity is an allocation problem which requires, which needs a production decision to be solved. Production decision, right? I hope you guys are writing these things. Then we have how to produce. Second problem, how to produce, aka production problem. So how to produce is clearly a production problem. Get it? What to produce is an allocation problem. How much of resources to be allocated for which goods? Then how to produce is a production problem. The decision to solve it is called choice of techniques decision. If you don't like the word techniques, you can say methods also. Good word is techniques. Choice of techniques decision. Choice of techniques decision. How to produce, aka production problem. Decision, choice of techniques decision. Thirdly, whom to produce. Whom to produce is the problem we like the most because it doesn't trouble us that much. Why? Whom to produce is a distribution problem which requires a distribution decision. Both are distribution. As a problem, it's a distribution problem. As a decision, it requires a distribution decision. Distribution decision. Get it? Right. So whom to produce is about now. If you guys remember, I couldn't say that earlier. How we learn this in the first chapter is we use the analogy of, or what I said was, every society, every country has to make a cake. So a country has to decide what kind of a cake to make, what to produce. A country has to decide, are they going to use a lot of machinery equipment when they make the cake, or are they going to use a lot of human effort, manual effort and make the cake? Each country has to decide. So what to produce, country has to decide. How to produce, what kind of a cake, how to make the cake, use more machinery, use more people effort, human effort and make. Also, once a cake is made, you have to decide how to cut the cake and distribute the cake. That is called whom to produce. Who gets how much of the cake, what size of piece of the cake they get, slice of the cake they get. Get it? Right. So, yep, sorry. Get this done and quickly let me know Okay, done. Okay, Pata. Shall we move on? Now we go to the next page where are you guys okay? I'm not getting any responses. What's the problem? Done. Okay. So next we are going to talk about, now if you guys remember, I said, right? Every economic system has several institutions, and those institutions are set up, arranged within a certain structure. So there's a structure, institutional structure is there. So we have to know what are the institutions, we have to know what are the other elements of this structure, other institutions and all that. And then we need to know, in each country, there is a way they arrange these institutions, right? The different things we use to, we call them institutional structural features. There are certain features that we need to know. And that part is also very important, because that's how we later on, we will learn how to see the difference between different economic systems. Don't worry, when I say it like that, it might be confusing. When we start doing it, it will be okay. Right. I need a bit of a confirmation so that I can move on to the next area, please. Yeah, I think we are done. So I'm going to move on now. Before that, let me again go back to the study material a bit. Right. So all this is done now. And we are in page 42, where we talk about institutional structure. Okay, institutional structure, how we have arranged our institutions. Right, institutions are common in any economic system. These are the institutions you will find, and how we arrange them. The other institutional structures are also there in every country, but from one country to another, one society to another, they might change a bit. Okay, they might change a bit. Okay, then we have basically the nature of institutional structural feature. That is a part that I said it's very important for us, because that will help us identify the difference between economic systems, different economic systems. Right. So let's start here. Okay, and then complete the table one by one. You guys can follow the slides. You will be guided properly with the virtual whiteboard or the PowerPoint slides. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we start with institutional components. First, the institutions, the first set. Okay, the institutions. In other words, you write this here. Okay, in this first set of rows, institutions, components. Right. So let's start then. First, we write households. I am not going to explain too much about households. Overall, they are the smallest but the largest economic unit. Smallest economic unit, but in total number, they are the largest economic unit. Could be one person or a group of people. Generally, we say a family unit, sharing a common budget, income, expenditure, living under one roof, right? That is a household. So households is an institution. Institution. There's a certain way we work, right? Then we have enterprises. There are two kinds of, you guys can keep writing. There are two kinds of enterprises that we will normally find within an economic system, right? Private enterprises, which are privately owned and more towards profit motivation. Then we have public enterprises that are focused on welfare motive. So private enterprises are more profit driven. Public enterprises are more focused on the welfare motive. Then we have government, which is the political administrative aspect or part of the government, right? So the main thing is the institution, right? The within bracket stuff is just something I'm using to explain this to you guys more clearly. So we have households, we have enterprises, we have government. Now in Sri Lanka, if you take government, so remember this is not where the government is producing goods and services. That part is public enterprises. That we have already covered here. Public enterprises part is done, right? Public enterprises. But this is the administration, the political part of the government. So in Sri Lanka, the system is very simple. You guys know this as well, right? In Sri Lanka, the system is where we have three elements, right? So we have the executive branch of the government. Then, I'm sorry about that. We have the small setting I have to do because I can't see the cursor, right? Somehow it has changed. Anyway, executive part of the government. Then we have the legislative part of the government, and we have the judiciary or judicial part of the government. It looks ugly, but it's a pyramid kind of a thing. Executive is on top, executive presidency, right? Then we have the legislative, that is the parliament, and the judiciary is the legal system, the supreme, the high courts to the supreme courts, to the appeal courts, to the magistrate courts, to the district courts. You know, the legal structure is there. Get it? So these three together, these three components is what we call the government of Sri Lanka, GOSL, right? We normally write the O in simple most of the time, right? Every country has a structure for their government, okay? So that's an institution. Then we have, okay, right. So households, enterprises, government. Then one of the most important institutions is markets. Every economic system has markets, right? So there are three main types of markets you will find within an economic system, the institution called markets. That is, you have basically product markets where goods and services are bought and sold, tangible goods, intangible services. Factor market where factors of production or inputs are being bought and sold. And the financial market, one could say, where money is being bought and sold, where we deal in credit, monetary things, right? Banks mainly are in this market, financial market, right? Then every economic system in the world has labor organizations. How we have organized our human resource, which is labor. So there are trade unions, professionals associations, workers congresses are there. So different ways labor has organized. It's also an institution, labor organizations. In Sri Lanka, the most popularly known is the trade unions. Then we have non-governmental organizations. So the final part, non-governmental organizations. We call them NGOs, or we have LNGOs, local or domestic non-government organizations, and INGOs, international non-government organizations. Now movements like Sarvodaya and these kinds of movements are local non-government organizations. Then Red Cross, Red Crescent, Save the Children. These are international ING or international non-government organizations. The difference is normally if it's a private sector organization, they are more focused on profits. These are non-government, meaning they are private sector, but they are not focused on profits. They are focused on some kind of a social cause, some kind of welfare-based objective. So non-government organizations. So these are identified as the main institutions that we see within an economic system. You need to remember them: households, enterprises, government, markets, labor organizations, and non-government organizations. Okay, right. Can I move on? Are we done? Yes, I think we are ready to move on. Right. Next, Buddha, you can see in your study material, we are going to talk about those in the example or analogy we use that we said personality is different, those components. They are also institutions, right? But they are unique from one country to another. They're unique from one country to another, right? So I'll just make this clear here. The aforementioned, that is the earlier mentioned institutions, households, enterprises, government, markets, labor organizations, non-government organizations, aforementioned institutions function or operate within the following structure or institutions. In other words, the framework, that's the word we use. So these institutions that we wrote, they operate, they work within a certain framework. That framework is of three things. What are these three things? Right? These three things are basically, remember them? Legal structure, formal, informal, incentive structure, material, coercive, and moral, and then structure of traditions, customs, cultural elements, which are unique to each economic system, right? Quickly write these three things in the second part of the table, right? I'll explain them once you are done. Okay, now every country has a legal structure. Every country in the world has a legal system. There is no country that today in the civilized modern world that we live in that doesn't have a legal structure. But each country's legal structure is not the same. The legal structure of Sri Lanka, based on our fundamental law, the constitution, and all these different acts approved in parliament, we have a legal structure. So according to different acts and the constitution, we implement the law in our country. So certain things that might be legal in Sri Lanka might be illegal in another country. Mostly it's the other way around. Most things that might be legal in other countries might be illegal in Sri Lanka. Is that clear? So basically, the institution called the legal structure is different from country to country. And within this legal structure, we have two types of legal structure is there. Two things are there, formal and informal. Formal is, as I mentioned earlier, the constitution of the country, then the different acts that are approved in parliament, right? Those are formal and they are implemented by, enforced by a civil force called the police. And when we commit legal offenses or violate these formal laws, then there is a system of judiciary. The courts are there to decree punishment and things like that. Formal. The laws written in the books. Informal is society's laws. That is certain things, certain rules, certain ethics, certain behaviors that the society thinks is unsuitable or thinks it is uncivilized and unethical. So there is no legal punishment for those, but society has a punishment. The punishment given by society is you are isolated, you are marginalized, you're shunned away from that society. You're pushed aside from the society. Society will reject you as one of its equal members when you break informal laws. Informal laws. You can't go to courts and police for informal law violations, only for formal. Get it? Right. Then, secondly, incentive structure. Now, incentive, the term incentive, some people mistakenly say intensive or something else. Incentives are something that motivates us, something that gives us a certain encouragement, right? So incentives could be positive, then we use the word incentive. When incentives become something negative, we call them disincentive. Disincentive. Something that encourages us to do something. A simple definition, we will learn incentives separately, right, in a future area. But for now, whatever that motivates us to do something is the incentive. So simple way to say this is why we do what we do. So incentives represent why we do what we do. Incentives are all about why we do what we do. What motivates us to do what we do. So there are three kinds of incentives we will learn in detail later on. For now, I have just mentioned them. Material, coercive. Material incentives are because there's a certain material benefit for you. Could be in terms of a good, could be in terms of a service, could be in terms of a recognition, respect. Get what I'm saying? Certain other benefit you get. So because there is some self-interest for you, some benefit for you, if you are motivated to do something, that's material incentive. Coercive incentive is when you're forced to do something. When there's a punishment if you don't do something, because you're afraid of the punishment, to stay away from the punishment. When you do something, that's called coerce or coercive incentive. Coercive incentive. Moral incentive is simply the things we do because it's a right thing to do. When we do something because it's simply the right, correct thing to do. That's called moral incentives. That's called moral. We'll learn more in detail. I'll give examples and I'll use another good analogy and explain, right, about you guys, why you do what you do. Could be due to one of these three incentives, right? Why you're doing A-levels, right? Then thirdly, structure of traditions, customs, cultural elements, which are very unique to each country. Every country has a culture, tradition, cultural elements, customs are there in every country, but they are different from country to country, very unique to that country, very much the flavor of that country, very unique to that country, right? So I think we are okay, right? So this is the framework. We use these three things and have a framework. Within that, only within that we will see, or within that framework we will see households, enterprises, government, markets, labor organizations, NGOs, all of these parties operate within this framework, within this structure. Get it? Right. Then this next part is of thundering importance. Nature of institutional structural features. Simply we can say nature of institutional features. Nature of the institutional feature. Again, in every economic system we find this, but it is again the nature of it, the way it's operating within an economic system changes from country to country, right? There are 5 things you guys need to master, especially the first 3. Especially the first 3 you need to be really, really good with. First one, number 1, follow the order. Number 1, you guys can start writing also. Number 1, the nature of resource ownership. The nature of resource ownership. In every country in the world, Buddha, there is resource ownership. Some party will own the resources, especially the property resources. So here, when we say resources, right? Here, when we say resources, mainly we refer to, right? Property resources. Property resources. Remember property resources? What are property resources? Can someone quickly tell me what are property resources? Property resources? Yes, no, that is one. There are 2. What are the 2 property resources? We have learned this in the first chapter. Property resources. So, Buddha, what you are experiencing is something very natural, right? Because studies have shown, right, that most people, when they learn something new or when they get some new information to their mind, after the first 2 or 3 hours, around 50% of that is forgotten. We'll say 40% is forgotten around the first 2 to 3 hours after learning something. So we learned about this a while back. So I understand if you have forgotten, but when you're, if you are to be a good student, especially when you do A-levels, you have to find a way to remember things. So especially in theory areas like this. So I will try to do some work with you guys. We'll start next week to help you make sure that you remember things. Okay, I think that guidance I had to provide. Right. As you guys remember, as you guys will definitely remember when I say this, but it was not quickly recallable. Out of the 4 factors of production or production resources, that is land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, economic resources, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. The land and capital, that's why we learned in that order, if you remember. We talked about land first, then we talked about capital because they were property resources. You can buy and sell them. Ownership can change. Then we took labor and entrepreneurship as human resources. So property resources, in every country, there's a certain ownership of property resources. Either the private sector, public sector will own property resources. Depending on which party owns majority of the property resources, or depending on which party is dominant in the economy, based on their ownership of these property resources, land and capital, then we identify different economic systems. For example, we can say capitalist, socialist economic systems. The difference is nature of resource ownership. Get it? Right. Secondly, I assume you guys are writing this. Secondly, the nature of resource allocation mechanism. The nature of resource allocation mechanism. Remember, an economic system itself is a mechanism for resource allocation. But that mechanism, the exact method can change from country to country, or how they coordinate all the decisions when they allocate resources can change from economic system to another economic system. Mainly we have something called, we will learn the price mechanism, planning mechanism, mixed mechanism, or the use of traditions as a mechanism. So different methods. So the nature can change from economic system to another, one economic system to another economic system. But every economic system in the world has a resource allocation mechanism, method of allocating resources, also called the resource decision coordination mechanism. Right. Then thirdly, we have the nature of incentive structure. First two are very critical. That's a small gap there. Third one is also important. You have to know. First three, you definitely have to know and be very good with. Not only just know them, you should be able to use them and classify, categorize economic systems. Right. The nature of the incentive structure. The nature of the incentive structure. Remember, we talked about incentives. So depending on what kind of incentives are more powerful, more dominant in that economic system, are most people in that economic system or society focused on material incentives? If so, we can say what kind of an economic system they are. Or are they more focused on, or they are more concerned about coercive incentives? Right? So based on this, we can categorize countries into different economic systems. So first three, then 4 and 5. 4, the nature of income redistribution. Carefully listen and read it carefully and write properly. Nature of income redistribution. Nature of income redistribution. Social safety networks. Now in Sri Lanka, the nature of income redistribution is if a country has a lot of unfair distribution of income, if there's a big gap between the rich and the poor in a country, then we have to do a lot of redistribution of income, because the original distribution of income is not fair, unfair. So we have to redistribute. Social safety networks. In Sri Lanka, the main social safety network is, don't say social network, main social safety network in Sri Lanka is called the, any idea what is the main social safety network or the program in Sri Lanka called? To make sure every member of the society is able to fulfill their basic human needs. That is social safety, security. What is the main social safety system we have in Sri Lanka? Anyone? Especially helping low-income earners, poor families. What is this program called? There's a name for it. Anyone? No? We call it the Samurdhi program. Have you heard about something called Samurdhi program? Many people say, you know, they get the Samurdhi. Samurdhi labeno or Samurdhi Pratilabhi. They are benefited from that program. That's called the, are you guys with me? What A levels are we doing? Local or London? What A levels are we doing? Local or London? Local advanced levels. So all the programs relevant in Sri Lanka we need to learn. Is that clear? Right. The main social safety network or net program in Sri Lanka is called the Samurdhi program. Samurdhi Vedasatahan. Is that clear? Right. There's a separate authority for that. Samurdhi Adhikariya is there. Then they do work with them. There are so many families, especially in these hard economic times. Many families have become new Samurdhi beneficiary families because their income levels are dropping. Right. Then finally, we talk about politics and ideology. Based on the politics and ideology, some people say ideology also. Based on the ideologies, political ideology, social ideology, we can come up with different economic systems. Okay. But the first three, and in that also the first two is critical. Right? If someone comes and asks me, sir, what is the most most important institutional feature? I would say for A levels, the most important institutional feature is this, number 2. But the first three are nevertheless important. First three. Okay. First three are nevertheless important. Then 4 and 5, you should know. You should know how to write all 5. But 1 and 2, really important. 1, 2, 3, important. You need to know how to classify economic systems. In your study material, if you go to page 43, I think, the next page, there's another table where the same numbers are used. Number 1 is resource ownership. Number 2 is resource allocation mechanism. Number 3 is incentive structure. You can see a table in the next page. We will complete it properly next week. That's how we classify economic systems based on these features. Okay, right. In the bottom, it says what I have been saying up to now. Economic systems tend to vary or differ. Economic systems change from one to the other, depending on the nature or the functional setup of these institutional structures. Depending on these institutional structures, we learn, but don't get too confused, overwhelmed, and worried about these words. Once you understand what they mean, it will make sense. It will be okay. Okay, right. So evolutionary process of economic systems. I think we will have time for this, and then we will conclude, because if another bout of the power cut again, if the power goes off, I was informed around 6 here, right? We will have another interruption with us. So let's finish off an area. So with this, we complete the introduction part to economic systems. Now, if you look at in terms of the pages on the study material, it might be just 1 page we have covered back to back. But the knowledge element is what we should focus on. Education, knowledge is qualitative, not quantitative, right? Okay. Right, let's quickly get this done. Evolutionary process of economic systems. Key stages. How did we come up with the modern economic systems that we have today, these mechanisms we have today? Right, we started with the primitive communal system, right? Primitive communism, you can call it, not the Karl Marx version. Before that, primitive communism. Basically, people lived in a group. All of them belong to, a tight-knit group of people, community. The land was the main resource, and it was commonly owned. The land is owned by every member of the tribe, every member of that community. Get it? In the very ancient past, how we began to create a system or have a system, a method to solve our basic economic problem. So within that community, some different people are given a task. Some people are asked to do farming. Some people are asked to do child rearing, taking care of bringing up children. Some people are asked to focus on hunting. Some people are asked to focus on protecting the community or the tribe from another rival tribe or community somewhere. They will come and attack. So those kinds of things, right? So all those are the features of a primitive communal system. But as human society evolves, as we develop, as our thoughts change, wants multiply, meaning become unlimited, what will happen? We go from one system to another, right? So we went into a slave social system. which was a very dark stage of the evolutionary process of economic system, because this was the time where human beings were considered as a property resource, humans as a property resource. So humans were bought and sold as slaves. So slaverism is illegal in almost every country in the world today, and it is not only illegal, it's an extremely inhumane and unethical thing. Slaverism. Humans are not property. Your labor, you belong to you, no one else. You can't have a master. So there were the slaves, slave masters, and the slaves, and this whole system was there for many years. And then when the majority, that is the slaves, when they organize, when they fight, when they rebel against the slave owners, masters, then this whole system started to collapse. And with that, basically with these more powerful families like slave owners and all that, they gradually changed this whole thing, and they came up with something called the feudal social system. Basic idea is, this is where we started talking about these monarchies, royal families, kings and queens, all that kind of a structure was created. A monarchy was created. So the idea of this is, when you have a king or a queen, the basic idea is all the land belongs to the king or the queen, queen's land or king's land, or all the land belongs to the king or the queen. That's the first thing. Then the king or the queen will distribute this land or give the rights to use the land to act as the lords of the land. That's where the word lords and dames that are used in UK still came from. Landlords. So the land belongs to the king or the queen, but they give it to their trusted lords and dames, female, right? Right. Male will say lord, female will say dame. So all of this, so that kind of a system. So from one level to another, right? From the king or the queen to the lords, different levels. The ownership of land is given, and then what happens is, ownership meaning you can use the land, king's land, but you can use it. Then you engage in agricultural activities and things like that. You get a harvest. Part of that harvest, part of the output you produce using the king's land or the queen's land belongs to the king or the queen. That is basically a tax was introduced. Part of the harvest, part of the output is taken, right? Because the king or the queen and the royal family also has to eat, drink, and live, no? So for their expenditure, for their use. That's how the system worked. Then we came into the capital or capitalist social system. This is where, as society kept on evolving, right? Now, normally what we had is the royal family or the royalties. Then we had the people who are very close to them and support them and very loyal to the royals. Very loyal to the royals. That is basically the landlords and the dames and all that group of people. Then we had the peasants, normal people living in that country. Get it? Right. So, so again, there was this development where a business class, a business community was being created, who are profit motivated, who are about creating, collecting wealth. That's when this capitalism thing, right? Adam Smith will say capitalism came out as a way of looking at the economy, as a way of solving basic economic problems. In capitalism, we had two groups mainly, but capitalism is, that is the business owners and the laborers. Capitalism is mainly focused on the business element, the profit element, how to produce more goods and services, earn more profit. That is the focus of capitalism. Then along with this came another system. They are both there in the world still. Came another system called the social or socialism. Social system or socialism. Capitalism, socialism. Socialism is where with the Communist Manifesto written by the Karl Marx, right? This German-born social scientist, philosopher in a way, who was the adopted favorite child or the favorite child of Russia, right? Karl Marx and the teachings. So in communism, in socialism, it's all about the power of the little man. And if all the labor units get together, because they are big in number, they have a power, they can fight for their rights. So that was the whole concept of socialism. Everyone is equal, right? In capitalism, it's eat or be eaten, the survival of the fittest. If you are very smart, if you are very astute as a business person, if you know when to invest, when to pull out, if you are very, very focused on profit making, you become a success story in capitalism. If not, you're hopeless. But in socialism, the idea is everyone should be having the same living standard, kind of an idea is there. That is socialism. So these are the main steps in the evolutionary process of an economic system. You don't have to study them in detail. All what I said about the different stages, you don't have to remember. But a basic idea, Buddha, it's good to have how we evolved to the modern economic systems that you and I are living in today. There are further evolution also, like social market economy, what Sri Lanka is trying to become. There are other kinds of economic systems as well. Got it? Right. This is the evolutionary process. Right. So with that, what we have ended up doing is getting ourselves a really good introduction into economic systems. Okay. So from next week onwards, the whole results burden out of your head. And I'm sure, Buddha, you guys understand. There are enough and more of your schoolmates, right? Other subject classmates who might have still not joined or who might have joined but who are not part of, how do I say this without sounding rude, but anyway, who are not a part of a proper knowledge-based, exam success-based economics support class program. Then you need to encourage your schoolmates and all of your friends to join, if they are looking for virtual classes, to join the virtual class at least by next week, because already they have waited for a long time for results. Now, if the results are released, then at least from next week, starting from the month of December, then they should try to make sure they are part of the a proper economics support class program. Then me as a teacher can also take some responsibility and give them a proper, well thought of a cover-up option for what they have missed if they are new students, and we can do all that. So when you go and talk to your schoolmates and other classmates to join our Econ-Hub virtual classes, you need to give them the assurance that Sir said that everything they have missed, there's a plan, there's a way, Sir will help you cover. So don't worry, but the more you wait, the more you miss. What is the message? What is the simple tagline? The more you wait, the more you miss. More you wait in the sense without joining classes, the more you miss in the sense, not your friends, but the knowledge. Get it? So encourage them, Putha. Be a good friend and get them to do this soon as possible. Right. With that, let me conclude. And I'll see you guys next Friday. And we'll have a more productive session. Very good. Results are already out. Excellent. So I hope all of you guys have done well. Yes. So next week we'll talk a bit about the results. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to give your results out loud, but maybe you can we can talk about it a bit next week, right? And for all of you guys, I'm confident in saying congratulations for the very good job you have done in getting through the ordinary level hurdle, right? And now, Putha, celebrate, be happy, but start concentrating on A levels. Now you are really well and truly down the path of A levels. So don't look back. Keep going. Full steam ahead. Right. All the best.